ratings, she's directly responsible. And people were resenting her for it, like she was the cause of the problems that they had for the lack of recognition. No, she just happened to be born white. That's it. Caitlin Clark hasn't spoken against anybody. She hasn't assisted in denying anybody else the privileges they deserve. If anything, she's tried to provide assistance. A rising tide lifts all boats. She's trying to be the rising tide that lifts the boats.
The studio lights were blazing, but the temperature on set dropped the second Stephen A. Smith slammed his hand on the desk. Molly Karam froze mid-sentence, eyes wide, producers scrambling behind the cameras as Stephen A.'s voice cut through the air like a siren. This wasn't debate. This wasn't TV theater. This was raw fury, broadcast live, triggered by one name and one deal, Caitlin Clark and Nike. Stephen A. leaned forward, veins visible, jaw tight, demanding to know how a rookie had just landed a deal so massive it bent the league's power structure overnight. Molly tried to steady the conversation, reminding him about growth, visibility, progress. That was the wrong move. His laugh was sharp, almost bitter. He fired back that this wasn't progress. It was favoritism wrapped in marketing hype, and everyone pretending otherwise was lying to the audience. The clip went viral in minutes. Phones buzzed across locker rooms, front offices, and media desks. Players paused workouts to watch Stephen A. explode, accusing networks, sponsors, and even the league itself of manufacturing a superstar, while veterans watched their value shrink in real time. Molly pushed back, defending Caitlin's numbers, her impact, her undeniable pull. Stephen A. snapped harder, saying impact shouldn't come at the cost of respect. Social media detonated. Stephen A. finally said it. Molly's protecting the brand. Caitlin caught in the crossfire. Every comment fueled the fire. Caitlin hadn't spoken. Nike hadn't clarified. And now the most powerful voice in sports media had drawn a line on live television. Because once Stephen A. lost control, the illusion of calm around Caitlin Clark's Nike deal shattered. And nothing about this story was going to stay quiet again. Long before Stephen A., Smith lost his temper on live television, before Molly Karam tried to hold the conversation together with calm logic. The emotional fault lines were already spreading beneath the surface of sports media and the WNBA. Caitlin Clark's rise didn't just rewrite record books. It rewired expectations, threatened old hierarchies, and exposed how unprepared the system was for a star who arrived with numbers, noise, and cultural pull all at once. Stephen A. had seen this pattern before. He'd watched leagues crown saviors early, watched networks push narratives before locker rooms were ready to accept them. He remembered how quickly hype could turn into resentment, how veterans felt erased when cameras chased the newest face. To him, Caitlin's Nike deal wasn't just big, it was aggressive. It signaled that corporate confidence had outpaced competitive proof, and that always came with collateral damage. Molly, on the other hand, had lived inside the evolution of sports media. She'd watched women's basketball fight for relevance, fight for airtime, fight for respect. To her, Caitlin wasn't being forced on the audience, she was answering demand. Ratings spiked when Caitlin played. Clips traveled further. Young fans showed up earlier and stayed longer. Molly believed progress didn't wait for permission, and Caitlin represented momentum the league couldn't afford to slow down. That difference in perspective mattered, because behind the scenes, media executives were already adjusting rundowns. Caitlin's segments led shows. Other stars were discussed in relation to her, not independently. That subtle shift hurt. Players felt it. Analysts noticed it. Stephen A. noticed it most of all. He'd built his career on calling out uncomfortable truths, and this one was starting to itch under his skin. Caitlin herself was caught in an emotional paradox. She'd grown up idolizing the very players now being compared to her. She respected the grind, the history, the sacrifices made before her arrival. But she also understood opportunity when it knocked. Nike didn't just offer a deal, they offered validation, scale, and permanence. Turning that down wasn't bravery, it was career suicide. Accepting it, though, meant stepping into a spotlight that burned hot and unforgiving. Nike's involvement deepened the tension. The brand had studied the landscape meticulously. They saw a convergence of timing, talent, and culture that didn't come around often. Caitlin wasn't just a scorer, she was a story engine. Nike framed it as evolution, not replacement. But the messaging didn't reach everyone. Silence filled the gaps, and silence breeds suspicion. Stephen A. had long championed accountability. He defended stars when criticism was unfair, and torched institutions when they hid behind spin. Watching the Caitlyn deal unfold, he felt media was complicit in softening the edges. Questions weren't being asked loudly enough. Veterans' frustrations were being minimized. The league's long-term implications were being ignored in favor of viral celebration. Molly pushed back internally before she ever did on air. She argued that spotlight expansion didn't require dimming others. That Caitlyn's deal could lift the entire league if framed correctly. But framing was already out of control. Social media had turned the deal into a referendum. Growth versus respect, future versus foundation. Players watched the debate with mixed emotions. Some saw Caitlyn as a breakthrough. Others saw another example of how quickly attention could shift. Locker room conversations grew sharper. Media trust thinned. The emotional temperature rose quietly, steadily, waiting for a spark. That spark came when the show went live. Stephen A. didn't plan to explode. But years of bottled frustration, layered with concern for how narratives shape careers, poured out in real time. Molly wasn't his enemy, but she became the counterweight, defending what she believed was necessary evolution. Their clash wasn't personal. It was philosophical, and that made it combustible. Caitlyn watched the clip later, alone, feeling both defended and attacked by people who'd never spoken to her directly. Nike executives watched too, calculating risk. Fans chose sides instantly. What began as a deal had now become a cultural argument. And once that argument escaped the studio, there was no pulling it back. Because the backstory wasn't just about Caitlyn Clark. It was about who gets to decide when a star is crowned, and who pays the emotional price when that crown is placed too fast. The moment the clip finished looping on every platform, the tone of the entire sports conversation shifted. This wasn't just Stephen A. Smith yelling on TV anymore. This was a pressure valve blowing off in public, exposing everything people inside the industry had been dancing around in private. Producers at ESPN moved fast, but not fast enough. The segment was already everywhere, clipped, slowed down, remixed, and dissected line by line. Stephen A.'s words, sharp, relentless, unfiltered, were being framed as a warning, not a rant.
Oh, Molly, you did not say that, Molly. No, no,
That is
no.
what you said.
You
That
did
is
not.
what you
That's
said.
not what you said, Molly.
What are you guys
That is not what you said.
I literally just brought it up.
You were talking about. You were talking about us. You were talking about folks making the point that, at the time that they had picked the Olympic team, Caitlyn Clark didn't necessarily deserve it based on her play on the court. When the point that Shannon and I was making at the time was that, wait a minute. In the end, there are people that have ended up on Team USA.
Inside the WNBA, the reaction was immediate and visceral. Group chats exploded. Players who normally stayed silent started typing. Veterans felt seen for the first time in weeks. Younger players felt uneasy, wondering if Caitlyn Clark's success was about to become a liability for anyone standing near her. Coaches tried to redirect focus to practice, but everyone knew the league had stepped into a storm that basketball alone couldn't calm. Caitlyn Clark was in the middle of it, whether she liked it or not. She woke up to hundreds of messages, some supportive, some accusing, some begging her to say something, anything. Nike's team told her to stay quiet. ESPN's team wanted a response. The league preferred patience. Everyone wanted control over her voice, and that terrified her. Because the louder Stephen A. got, the more it felt like her silence was being interpreted as agreement, or worse, arrogance. Molly Qerim took the heat too. Clips of her pushing back went viral, but not gently. Comment sections turned brutal, accusing her of protecting corporate interests, of minimizing veteran struggles, of being the friendly face of a machine that chewed players up. She felt blindsided. On set, she'd tried to balance the conversation. Off set, she realized balance was no longer enough. The audience wanted sides. Stephen A. doubled down the next day. He didn't apologize. He clarified, and somehow made it worse. On air, he said the Caitlyn Clark Nike deal wasn't just big, it was destabilizing. That it sent a message to every veteran who had bled for the league that history mattered less than heat. He insisted he wasn't attacking Caitlyn, but he refused to soften the critique of how fast she'd been elevated. This is how resentment is born, he said. And when resentment grows, leagues fracture. Nike executives watched that segment with clenched jaws. Internally, they'd anticipated pushback, but not this kind. Not from Stephen A. Smith. His voice carried weight in rooms they needed to stay friendly. They moved quickly, arranging quiet calls with network executives, reminding them of partnerships, shared interests, long-term alignment. None of it stopped the momentum. The story had legs now. Behind the scenes, the WNBA Players Association requested clarification from the league about endorsement equity, visibility, and whether corporate partners were coordinating narratives. The request itself leaked within hours. That leak added gasoline. Fans interpreted it as proof that something unfair was happening behind closed doors. Analysts started using words like manufactured stardom and selective amplification. The debate got ugly fast. Caitlin finally broke her silence, but not publicly. She reached out privately to a veteran player she trusted, asking a simple question. Is this hurting people? The response she got back was honest and devastating. Not you. The way this is being handled. That distinction mattered, but it didn't ease the pressure. Caitlin realized she wasn't just a beneficiary anymore. She was a symbol, and symbols don't get to opt out. Stephen A., sensing the shift, pushed further. On a follow-up show, he revealed something no one expected. He said he'd been contacted, off the record, by multiple people inside the league who were deeply uncomfortable with how Caitlin's Nike deal was being positioned. He didn't name names. He didn't need to. The implication was enough. That revelation reframed everything. This wasn't one loud commentator versus progress. This was an internal conflict spilling into the open. The league tried to respond with a carefully worded statement about celebrating all players and embracing growth. It landed flat. Fans mocked it. Players ignored it. Stephen A. tore it apart on air, calling it corporate poetry with no backbone. Molly tried to steer the conversation toward solutions, but even she could feel the ground shifting. This wasn't solvable in a segment. Then came the first shocking twist. A leaked email surfaced online late one night, allegedly from a marketing executive tied to the Caitlin Clark campaign. The email referenced strategic amplification and front-facing narratives designed to recenter the league around a single, scalable star. Screenshots spread like wildfire. Whether fully authentic or not, the damage was instant. The phrase single, scalable star became a lightning rod. Stephen A. reacted live the next morning. He didn't shout this time. He went quiet. That scared people more. He looked into the camera and said, "If this is real, and it looks real, then this isn't about Caitlin Clark earning anything. This is about people deciding who matters and who doesn't." He paused, then added, "And that's dangerous." Molly sat frozen. Producers whispered. Social media exploded again, but now the outrage had direction. Fans weren't just arguing. They were demanding answers. Who wrote the email? Who approved the strategy? Was Caitlin aware? Was the league complicit? Nike went into damage control mode, denying the context, questioning the source, but refusing to deny the language outright. That hesitation was fatal. Silence read as confirmation. Sponsors started calling the league. The league called Nike. Everyone called lawyers. Caitlin saw the email and felt sick. This wasn't what she signed up for. She'd believed her deal was about basketball, about inspiration, about growth. Now it looked like a blueprint for division. She called her agent and asked a question that changed everything. "Do I have a copy of everything I signed?" Stephen A., meanwhile, became the unexpected center of the storm. Some praised him for speaking truth. Others accused him of sabotaging women's basketball during a critical growth moment. He didn't care. He said the quiet part out loud on his podcast. If growth requires silence about unfairness, then it's not growth, it's exploitation. The league felt the tremor. Players started choosing sides publicly. Some posted support for Caitlin, emphasizing she didn't create the system. Others reposted Stephen A.'s comments about respect and legacy. The unity everyone preached suddenly felt fragile, stretched thin by money, attention, and fear. Molly confronted Stephen A. off camera. The conversation was tense. She accused him of pouring fuel on a fire without offering a way out. He responded that fires reveal what buildings are made of. Their disagreement wasn't personal, but it was real. And now it was visible. Caitlin stood at a crossroads she never imagined. Speak and risk alienating powerful partners. Stay silent and risk becoming the face of something she didn't believe in. Nike waited. The league waited. Stephen A. waited. Because the first twist had already landed. And everyone knew the second, whatever it was, would decide whether this controversy faded or exploded into something the WNBA couldn't control anymore. The tension didn't simmer, it detonated. By the time morning shows went live, the league wasn't just trending, it was fracturing in real time. Players arrived at practice with phones glued to their hands, eyes hollowed by notifications that wouldn't stop. Coaches tried to talk X's and O's, but nobody was listening. Every drill felt pointless when careers suddenly felt negotiable. The leaked email had changed the temperature of the room. Now it wasn't about opinions. It was about intent. And intent is where trust goes to die. Stephen A. Smith escalated without raising his voice. On air, he read excerpts from messages he claimed were sent by current and former WNBA players. Women terrified to speak publicly, afraid of being labeled anti-growth or anti-Caitlyn for questioning the system. He emphasized one sentence over and over. We're not mad at her. We're scared of being erased. That line ripped through the internet like a blade. Caitlin Clark felt it hit her chest. Erased. That wasn't what she wanted. That wasn't what she represented. Yet everywhere she turned, her face was being used as proof of someone else's argument. Nike advised her to release a neutral statement. The league suggested patience. Her inner circle begged her to protect herself. But the locker rooms across the WNBA were already boiling, and neutrality suddenly looked like betrayal. Then the whispers started. Anonymous reports surfaced claiming that certain media appearances, highlight placements, and primetime slots had been suggested rather than earned. Former players began hinting at meetings where marketing priorities outweighed basketball realities. None of it was confirmed. All of it felt plausible. And in scandal culture, plausibility is enough. Molly Karam found herself trapped between two collapsing walls. On one side, network executives reminding her of partnerships. On the other, viewers accusing her of silence when it mattered most. During a tense broadcast, she finally snapped back at a panelist who dismissed the concerns as jealousy. Her voice shook when she said, "Calling it jealousy is the easiest way to avoid accountability." The clip went viral within minutes. Stephen A. watched it backstage. He didn't smile, but he nodded. Nike's response came late and careful, and that was the problem. Carefully worded statements about celebrating all athletes sounded hollow against screenshots, leaked emails, and raw player testimony. Sponsors began asking questions that had teeth. Not about views, but about values. The league realized this wasn't a PR flare-up. This was an identity crisis. Inside one WNBA locker room, a veteran reportedly confronted a younger teammate who'd reposted a pro-Caitlyn graphic without context. Voices rose. Emotions spilled. It wasn't about the post, it was about fear. Fear of becoming invisible. Fear of being replaced by algorithms and aesthetics instead of legacy and labor. Teammates stopped making eye contact. Practice ended early. Then came the second major twist. A respected former WNBA star, someone untouchable, someone universally admired, broke her silence in a live interview. She didn't name Caitlyn. She didn't attack Nike directly. She did something worse. She confirmed that strategic favoritism conversations had existed for years. That Caitlyn wasn't the beginning. She was the acceleration. Her words were calm, devastating, irreversible. This league has always needed stars, she said. But it's never needed sacrifices. And lately, it feels like some of us are being offered up quietly so the spotlight can burn brighter elsewhere. The fallout was immediate. Social media flipped. The narrative shifted from speculation to reckoning. Fans demanded transparency. Hashtags calling for equity surged. Clips of Stephen A.'s earlier warnings resurfaced, now framed as prophecy instead of provocation. Caitlyn watched the interview alone. No agent. No advisor. Just her and the truth she could no longer avoid. This wasn't about whether she deserved her success. It was about whether she was willing to let it cost others theirs. She realized something chilling. Silence wasn't protection anymore. It was participation. Stephen A. returned to television that night with a different energy. He wasn't arguing. He was documenting collapse. He said the league stood at a fork in the road. Confront the system honestly, or let resentment calcify into something permanent. He warned that fans could sense dishonesty faster than executives ever could. Behind closed doors, emergency meetings were called. Kathy Engelbert faced pressure from every direction: players, sponsors, networks. Someone floated the idea of an internal review. Someone else suggested waiting it out. That suggestion died quickly. Waiting was no longer an option. Molly and Stephen A. shared the same desk again, tension thick enough to suffocate. This time, they didn't debate. They laid out facts. They acknowledged pain. And in that rare moment of on-air honesty, viewers saw something crack, not between them, but above them. Caitlyn drafted a statement, deleted it, drafted another. Her hands shook. Whatever she said next would define her beyond basketball. Endorsements could vanish. Support could turn. But if she said nothing, she'd carry a weight she didn't earn but refused to reject. The league's future hovered on the edge of that decision. Because the second twist wasn't just a revelation. It was a countdown. And everyone knew the next move, Caitlyn's move, would either heal the fracture or split the WNBA wide open with no way back. The fallout didn't arrive quietly. It slammed into the league like a tidal wave, dragging everyone into the open whether they were ready or not. By sunrise, the WNBA wasn't just a sports topic, it was a cultural battlefield. Morning shows, podcasts, live streams, burner accounts, former players, current stars, and anonymous insiders all piled on at once, each adding fuel to a fire that refused to burn out. Arenas felt different. Fans cheered louder, but the noise carried an edge, like judgment disguised as loyalty. Every time Caitlin Clark touched the ball, the reaction split the room. Half the crowd roared like she was the future incarnate. The other half stayed silent, arms crossed, watching like jurors waiting for a verdict. Cameras caught it all. Close-ups lingered too long. Every facial expression became evidence. Locker rooms were worse. Veteran players stopped speaking freely. Younger players whispered. Text threads exploded with anger, fear, and resentment that had been bottled for years. Some players admitted they felt guilty cashing smaller endorsement checks while watching one face dominate every billboard. Others snapped back, saying success wasn't a crime. The divide wasn't personal, but it felt personal.
You're not listening, Molly. You're not listening. I'm talking about your point, Molly. Your point.
And I'm explaining it to you.
At the end of the day, we were making the point. Do you want to promote the league or not? And people like Andrea and others were resistant to that playing a role in somebody making the roster for Team USA. And we were saying, hell with that. You want to promote the sport. You put that girl up in there, and people were appalled at that notion.
But
that was
Stephen
the
A,
subject.
But Stephen A, this is just going to come from different perspectives, because you all's initial point was a marketing point, and that was what I was arguing with. That was what I was arguing with.
Right.
Marketing point for Caitlyn. What Molly is trying to say, and what I agree with, is now that we have seen how Caitlyn finished this season, there is a good basketball argument for her being on the team.
Stephen A. Smith went nuclear again, but this time with restraint sharpened into something dangerous. He talked about pain instead of profit, about women who built the league when cameras weren't around, about how favoritism doesn't need evil intent to cause destruction, it just needs silence. His monologue ended with one line that echoed everywhere. History doesn't forgive leagues that choose money over trust. Molly Karam received both praise and venom. Some hailed her as brave. Others accused her of switching sides too late. She read comments during breaks, jaw clenched, absorbing the cost of honesty in real time. When she returned to camera, her voice cracked just once. It was enough to make the clip viral. Nike's internal tension spilled outward. Reports surfaced of emergency brand meetings, delayed campaigns, revised rollout plans. Other athletes quietly questioned their contracts. Was visibility earned or assigned? The question alone rattled confidence across the league. Sponsors hate uncertainty. Players live in it. Caitlin Clark felt isolated in ways the stat sheet could never explain. Teammates supported her publicly, but something had shifted. Conversations stopped when she entered rooms. Jokes landed flat. Even encouragement felt cautious, like everyone was afraid of saying the wrong thing. She wasn't being punished, but she wasn't being embraced either. That limbo hurt worse than booze. Angel Reese's name trended without her saying a word. Paige Bucher's old interviews resurfaced. Aya Wilson's past comments were dissected line by line. Everyone became a symbol whether they wanted to or not. The league's stars were no longer just athletes. They were arguments. Then came the emotional breaking points. One player reportedly broke down during a closed-door team meeting, admitting she feared retirement not because of age, but because relevance felt algorithmic now. Another stormed out after being told to just focus on basketball. Focus felt impossible when identity itself was under review. Fans took sides viciously. Timelines turned toxic. Longtime supporters accused the league of cannibalizing itself. New fans demanded gratitude instead of criticism. Nobody listened. Everyone shouted. Kathy Engelbert finally addressed the chaos, but her words felt measured in a moment that demanded blood honesty. She spoke of unity, growth, and listening sessions. The response was brutal. Comment sections filled with one repeated phrase: too late. Because once trust cracks publicly, apologies sound rehearsed. Stephen A. wasn't done. He hinted, carefully, at one more revelation still buried. Something that would explain why this moment escalated so fast. Something involving decisions made behind closed doors months ago. He didn't name names. He didn't give details. He just said, "If this comes out, nothing stays the same." Caitlin watched that clip on repeat. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Support, criticism, warnings, please. One message stood out. From someone inside the league. For words only. "They're waiting on you." The fallout had reached its peak. The noise was deafening. The pressure unbearable. And the entire league now hovered in suspension, knowing the next chapter wouldn't be written by executives, media, or sponsors. It would be written by Caitlin Clark herself. And whatever she chose to say next would either calm the storm or turn this scandal into something the WNBA could never outrun. The silence didn't mean peace. It meant something was being prepared. Inside a private conference room miles away from cameras, a single decision was stalling everything. Schedules froze. PR teams paused. Brand emails sat unsent. No one wanted to move first, not until Caitlin Clark made her choice. Because behind the noise, behind the outrage, behind the viral clips and manufactured debates, one truth had surfaced that terrified everyone in power. The league no longer controlled the narrative. She did. Caitlin sat alone that night, lights off, phone face down, replaying moments that had nothing to do with basketball. The first empty gym. The first scholarship doubt. The years of being told she was too much, too visible, too marketable to be relatable. Now those same traits had turned into weapons, used against others, against the league, against her. And she never asked for it. At 2:17 a.m., she opened the message thread she'd been avoiding. The one from a Nike executive she trusted. It wasn't congratulations. It wasn't strategy. It was a warning. 3 sentences. One of them landed like a punch. If you speak, it won't be reversible. Because what Caitlin knew, and what the public didn't, was that her deal wasn't the beginning of the divide. It was the result of a decision made months earlier, when executives quietly chose one face to accelerate growth while shelving others temporarily. A word that now felt radioactive. That plan had names attached to it. Emails, projections, and a list of players who were never told. Stephen A. Smith knew fragments. Molly suspected more. The players felt it in their bones. But Caitlin had the receipts. Across town, a closed-door meeting reached its boiling point. Voices rose. A veteran slammed her hand on the table and asked the question everyone feared. What happens if she goes public? No one answered, because they all knew. If Caitlin exposed the internal strategy, if she confirmed that favoritism wasn't accidental but engineered, the backlash wouldn't just hit Nike. It would hit the league's credibility at its core. At dawn, Caitlin posted nothing. No statement. No emoji. Just silence. The internet exploded anyway. Some called it guilt. Others called it pressure. A few insiders panicked, mistaking restraint for compliance. They were wrong. By mid-morning, an unannounced live stream link appeared on Caitlin's verified account. No caption. No warning. Just a countdown clock. 10 minutes. The number of viewers climbed faster than any WNBA stream in history. Players shared it privately. Executives watched from offices. Stephen A. leaned forward. Molly stopped breathing. With 30 seconds left, a final message hit Caitlin's phone. Unknown number. No introduction. No signature. You don't have to carry this alone. But if you do this, they'll come for you. The countdown hit 0. The screen flickered on. Caitlin appeared, not in a studio, not in uniform, not smiling. She looked tired. Calm. Dangerous in the quiet way that only comes when someone has decided they're done being managed. She didn't greet the audience. She didn't thank anyone for tuning in. She took a breath and said one sentence that detonated everything. I was never supposed to be the only one. The comments froze. The chat lagged. Somewhere, someone shut a door too hard. She began to speak, not emotionally, not defensively, but precisely, about conversations that happened off camera, about promises made to multiple players, about how growth strategy became a shield for exclusion. She didn't accuse names yet. She didn't show proof yet. She just confirmed the truth existed. And then she stopped. I have documents, she said. But before I share them, I need to know something. Her eyes lifted, locking straight into the camera. Are we ready to fix this, or just burn it down? The stream cut. No outro. No clarification. No follow-up. Within seconds, league offices erupted. Phones rang nonstop. Nike's stock ticker dipped. Players' group chats went dead silent. The kind of silence that only happens when something irreversible has begun. Stephen A. smiled once, grim knowing. Molly whispered, "Oh my God." Caitlin Clark had thrown the power back at everyone else. And the scariest part wasn't what she'd said. It was what she hadn't shown yet. This is no longer just a story you watch. This is a moment you decide whether to ignore or confront. The league is at a crossroads, and silence now isn't neutrality, it's permission. Every view, every comment, every share determines whether truth gets buried or forced into the open where it belongs. If you've ever cheered for women's basketball, this is your line in the sand. Because what's unfolding isn't about one player, one deal, or one argument on television. It's about power deciding who gets elevated, who gets erased, and who is expected to smile through it. That system only survives when fans look away. Talk about this. Loudly. In comments, on timelines, in group chats. Ask the uncomfortable questions others are afraid to say out loud. Why now? Who decided? Who benefits? Pressure doesn't scare leagues, but exposure does. History shows that change only comes when the audience refuses to be distracted. Support the players who risk everything by speaking. Not just the stars, not just the faces on billboards, but the voices shaking behind closed doors. Demand transparency from brands that profit off authenticity while hiding strategy behind buzzwords. Growth without fairness isn't progress. It's exploitation dressed up as success. If you're a fan of Caitlin Clark, don't shield her from accountability. Stand with her courage. If you're a supporter of players who feel sidelined, don't turn resentment into division. Turn it into demands. The league is watching the reaction more closely than any press conference. Subscribe. Stay locked in. Because the next reveal won't come from official statements. It will come from pressure. From attention. From fans who refuse to let this fade into the next news cycle. Algorithms amplify noise, but communities create consequences. And remember this, leagues don't change because they want to. They change because they're forced to. Forced by eyes that won't blink, voices that won't quiet, and fans who understand that loving the game means protecting its integrity. This story isn't ending here. It's accelerating. And what happens next depends entirely on whether you choose to stay silent or become part of the reckoning.